Today we are going to be talking about Minority Report. In the year 2054, crime in the United States, and murder in particular, is at an all-time high. In an effort to contain the violence, the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. have founded a new task force called Pre-Crime, allowing a specially assigned unit to proactively stop murders before they can even be committed. Their means of doing so is through precogs, short for precognitives, three mentally altered humans who are capable of seeing the future. When the precog sense that a murder is going to be committed, an automated system processes two painted wooden balls, one with the name of the perpetrators engraved into it, and one with the name of the victims engraved into it. The shape and grain of each ball is unique, rendering the system fully tamper-proof. The color of the ball is indicative of what kind of murder is going to happen. A brown ball indicates a premeditated murder, which the precogs can predict up to 4 days before it is committed. A red ball indicates a crime of passion, which, due to the lack of premeditation, cannot be seen until often no less than an hour before it will be committed. The only three things that the precogs can predict are the victim or victims, the perpetrator, the exact date and time of the crime, and the exact sequence of events that lead up to the crime. As they cannot pinpoint the location of the crime, the pre-crime task force led by John Anderton, Tom Cruise, must perform a meticulous process called scrubbing, where they process the images produced from the precogs' visions in order to locate telltale clues and thus narrow down the location. Once they are certain of the location, the team flies off in a special aircraft to thwart the crime. They then secure the culprit by haloing them, a device placed around his head that renders them fully incapacitated. The movie opens with Anderton's team catching an early morning red ball case. The perpetrator is going to be a male in his 40s named Howard Marks, who in exactly 24 minutes is going to catch his wife Sarah in bed with another man named Donald Dubin. Upon finding them together, Howard will stab them both to death with a pair of scissors. Anderton scrubs through the images, while also having to deal with the arrival of Danny Whitwer, Colin Farrell, a Justice Department official who's been sent to audit the pre-crime system before a congressional vote on whether or not to take the system nationwide. One of Anderton's colleagues named Fletcher, explains to Whitwer the basic workings of the system as Anderton continues analyzing the vision. John soon narrows down the location, and joins a number of pre-crime officers going to the location, leaving Whitwer back at pre-crime headquarters. With mere seconds to go, Anderton and his colleagues find the residence, and stop Howard before the precog's vision can come to pass. Howard is identified by iris scan, and is promptly arrested and haloed, while his wife and her lover are immediately given counseling by a trauma response unit. After the suspect has been apprehended, the murder reappears on the displays back at headquarters. Whitwer sees these and questions one of the technicians about this, and is informed that sometimes after a crime that has been stopped, the precogs have these echo images pass through their minds, before they are deleted from the system. That evening, Anderton reminisces over home movies of his ex-wife Laura, Catherine Morris, and the couple's missing 6-year-old son, who disappeared several years before at a public swimming pool. Anderton is also shown to have an addiction to an illegal inhaled hallucinogen called neuroin, new heroin. The next morning, Whitwer's official tour of the pre-crime headquarters begins. Throughout the tour, Whitwer points out there are potential questions about the ethics of the precogs. Anderton and his colleagues explain that the system is designed in a way to be practically foolproof, due to the nature of premeditation and the fact that the precogs see what the killer will do, not what they intend to do. This is why they don't get false alarms caused by people who contemplate murdering someone but will never actually go through with it. At Whitwer's insistence, Anderton takes him into the chamber in which the precogs are kept semi-conscious in a pool of fluid similar to amniotic fluid and are wired to the pre-crime computer system. Though he is somewhat impressed by what he has seen, and even with the absence of murders in D.C., since the program started, Whitwer is still convinced that the program is not flawless. After Whitwer has gone, the precog Agatha, Samantha Morton, snaps fully awake, and images of a woman being murdered play across the chamber's video screens. Curious as to these images, Anderton goes down to containment, where numerous other haloed pre-crime assailants are kept. With the aid of a supervisor named Gideon, Tim Blake Nelson, Anderton finds the assailant who was in Agatha's previs, though he is classified as a John Doe, due to him having swapped out his eyes for someone else's, to fool the identification sensors. Gideon attempts to pull up more information on the case, but finds that of the three precogs, Agatha's previs is missing. As well, information on where the supposed victim named and Lively is also missing. The only information that the computer has on her is that she was a single mother, who was also a heroin addict, but records indicate she went to a rehabilitation clinic to treat her habit. Anderton reports his findings to pre-crime director Lamar Burgess, Max von Sydow, who suggests that he let the matter drop. turning his attention towards the thought that when pre-crime goes nationwide, they need to find a way to protect it from larger interests. Anderton assures his mentor that he won't let that happen. Upon returning to his office, Anderton is alerted to a premeditated murder that is to take place in 36 hours. The victim has already been identified as Leo Crow, but the perpetrator's identity is still a mystery. As he begins to review the information, Anderton is shaken when he soon finds out that he is the perpetrator. Anderton attempts to get out of the building before this revelation reaches his colleagues, but encounters Whitwer in the elevator, leading John to think that Whitwer is setting him up. However, an alarm in the building sounds, and Anderton rushes from the elevator and out of the building. It isn't long before pre-crime officers find John. He manages to escape from them, but then is found by Whitwer and some officers. The chase leads the group into an automated auto assembly plant, where Anderton survives and escapes in a newly built car. He makes his way to the residence of Dr. Iris Heineman, Lois Smith, whose research laid the groundwork for the pre-crime program, upon finding out that some children of neuron addicts soon develop the ability to see future murders. Quite eccentric but still coherent, Heineman explains that the three precogs do not always agree on their visions of the future. When this happens, the one that deviates the most from the others is typically ignored. In order to establish his innocence, Anderton must determine if he has a minority report that will clear his name. Anderton is puzzled as to which of the precogs would generate a minority report, and Heineman tells him it's the most talented of the three, Agatha. Since everyone is subjected to iris scans wherever they go, Anderton undergoes an eye transplant at the hands of a shady doctor. The doctor is actually one of John's past cases, whom he busted for performing questionable surgery. However, the doctor performs the procedure anyway, leaving John alone to recover. While recovering after the surgery, he dreams about the day his son was abducted from a swimming pool, and awakens to find the pre-crime team searching the building for him. Small robotic eye scanners known as spiders are sent into the rooms. One of them finds Anderton and scans his iris, but the surgery has succeeded and he is not recognized. Returning to the pre-crime offices in disguise, Anderton removes Agatha from the precog's chamber, disrupting the trio's hive mind that makes the system work. He takes her to a hacker friend of his, who successfully extracts her vision of Crow's murder for Anderton to see. However, the vision does not deviate from what he saw previously, and Anderton realizes that he doesn't have a minority report. Suddenly, Agatha begins to have a seizure, and the image of Anne Lively being drowned is seen again. As Anderton watches the vision, his friend alerts him to pre-crime officers in their vicinity. Agatha and Anderton narrowly escape Anderton's team, by making use of strategic information provided by Agatha, who is able to predict the immediate future. Anderton tracks down Crow's address and gains entry to his apartment. Crow is not present, but he finds a pile of photographs of children, including his missing son. Anderton realizes that there is no minority report in his case and he is now going to kill Crow, whom he now blames for the kidnapping. When Crow enters, Anderton assaults him to extract a confession as Agatha pleads with Anderton not to commit this murder. Anderton is blind to her pleas and is intending to kill Crow, until the timer on his watch goes off. The time when the murder is supposed to take place. Anderton relents, and begins to read Crow his Miranda rights. Crow reveals that the photographs are doctored and were given to him to live in the apartment in order to set up this very confrontation. His family has been promised a cash payoff only if Anderton kills him. To force this outcome, Crow grabs Anderton's gun hand, aims the weapon at himself, and pulls the trigger. After Anderton and Agatha flee, Whitwer and the pre-crime team arrive to investigate the crime scene. Whitwer is skeptical about the orgy of evidence that was left behind and later discusses his misgiving with Burgess, bringing up the Lively case as well. He now has all three precogs' records of that murder, but slight differences between them lead him to deduce what really happened that day. Whitwer shows Burgess the previsions from containment, but then reveals Agatha's, which was not on file. Agatha's vision shows a very big difference, leading Whitwer to postulate that the crime against Anne Lively took place at two different times. When Burgess questions Whitwer, the young man posits his theory: Anne Lively's potential killer was arrested based on the matching visions of Arthur and Dashiell, but after pre-crime had taken the man away, a second person, dressed to look identical to the potential killer, arrived and killed her in exactly the same manner. The similarity of the incidents would simply lead the precog text to assume the act Agatha witnessed was an echo vision, and therefore, disregard it. Whitwer suggests that only a member of pre-crime could have the skill to manipulate the system in this way, whereupon Burgess, revealing himself as the true architect of John's framing, shoots and kills Whitwer, knowing that the other precogs are unable to foresee this murder with Agatha gone. Shortly after the murder, Lara calls Burgess to tell him that John and Agatha are staying with her. As she relaxes in the calm surroundings of Lara's home, Agatha shares with John and Laura a vision of what might have been had their son lived. During this time, John has been thinking about Lively, and deduces that she is Agatha's mother. However, pre-crime soon swarms the house, and John is haloed and Agatha is returned to the precogs chamber. Burgess later meets with Laura to comfort her, before he is to attend a ceremony in anticipation of the nationwide pre-crime rollout. During this time, Laura brings up Lively, which Burgess claims he has no knowledge of. However, he claims he'll go to the containment chamber and inquire to Gideon if anyone drowned a woman by that name. His mentioning of the cause of death, which she didn't reveal to Burgess, then makes Laura suspicious. Realizing Burgess is lying, Laura rushes back to precog headquarters and forces Gideon to release Anderton. Once he's out, Anderton calls Burgess to reveal he's figured out his whole murderous modus operandi. Of the three precogs, Agatha was the strongest, and enabled much of the program to continue. However, her mother, Lively, got over her neuroin addiction, and wanted her daughter back. Knowing this would sideline the program, Lamar arranged for the John Doe Anderton saw in containment, to attempt the murder. Once pre-crime had apprehended the suspect, Burgess appeared to Anne, and donning a disguise similar to the suspect's, killed Anne in the way the precogs saw. But, given that pre-crime had apprehended a suspect, it was assumed Agatha's vision of her mother's death was little more than an echo. Thus, the vision was deleted, and Lively just became another missing person. As Lamar and John continue to talk, a new Red Ball murder is detected by the precogs, with Anderton as victim and Burgess as perpetrator. Realizing that Anderton must be somewhere nearby, Burgess takes an antique revolver given to him as a gift and searches for him. When the two men come face to face, Anderton points out that Lamar is in a catch-22. If Burgess kills him, he will prove that pre-crime works, but will go to prison for life. If he doesn't shoot, the pre-crime system is proven to be unreliable. Burgess resolves the dilemma with a third option, killing himself. With the pre-crime program having been found to be subject to manipulation and thus flawed, it is quickly abandoned. All criminals imprisoned under it are granted immediate pardons and are released from prison, though local police departments keep watch on many of them for years. Anderton reconciles with Laura, now pregnant with their second child, and the precogs are moved to an unnamed remote location where they can live in peace, bringing us to the end of the movie. Comment below what you think. If you haven't already, like and subscribe.